This is an Avocado Media Network presentation.
The Art.Is.Tic. It's an honor to be here, my brother. Turn me up in the headphones a little bit. You know, there's an old saying. All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. Well, we done doing nothing. May the light forever shine on everyone that glow before me. We used to be just dope, now this whiskey soaked in glory.
Chapter 2. I Have a Dream. In 2003, there were only about 3 recording studios in Dollar City. In truth, there were probably more, but for some reason, these were the ones we decided were okay for rappers to go to. Of these 3 studios, the only one I never got a chance to record at was Mission Press, a Catholic church initiative that had produced classic albums for the most absurd victims of AIDS, the Glorious Band. I hate to have to be the one to remind us, but it is truly sad what Unprotected Sex did to one of the most phenomenal bands at the end of an era. The other 2 studios were Mastermind and Sound Factory Entertainment. In a strange way, these 2 labels were the total opposites of each other. Mastermind was a literal one-man record label located in a rich kid's bedroom. The music, I later discovered, was not rich. This was because of the producer's choice of production software. It was the early 2000s, and Zambians had not yet figured out how to make computer software produce music the same way their American counterparts did. That was a very important studio for me, however, because the producer left me to my own vices. I was given freedom to decide what type of artist I was going to be at a very young age, due to the fact that the producer was not well versed in hip-hop culture. He was a Congolese immigrant. He never had basis on which to police rappers, so he let us roam free, trusting that we knew what we were doing. We didn't. The second studio I recorded at in Dollar was the total opposite of Mastermind Records. One would not be out of place to wonder whether their difference was as a result of one another existing. Where Mastermind was loud and thumping, Sound Factory Entertainment was soulful and message-oriented. This was the studio where I recorded the music that eventually broke me out on radio. Because he could play instruments, the producer usually ended up making more personal music. This, coupled with the fact that he was quite religious, made it very difficult for me to create music that was pointless. For the first time, the people in my studio sessions were young Christians that were discovering God, so I had to have more than just clever lines to wow them. I may never know why wowing them was so important to me, but it led to the unconscious decision to always make music that had substance. Without realizing it, I was learning to make music that was not just for people that were like me. Later on in my career, when people that were significantly older and wiser than me related to my music, I looked back on this moment in gratitude. In a life where I had very few things working for me, the few that worked for me worked really well. Around this time, I met my kindred spirit in the form of a kid named Italo Morelli. While recording at Mastermind Studios, I started to notice an abstract beginning of a top 10 list of rappers in the city. A mini industry was forming. Songs that were recorded in bedrooms were becoming the topic of discussions at barbershops and in girls' toilets. This created an air of competition in our young minds. Due to our socio-economic situation, the city began to pay attention to the opinions of rap critics from the upper-tier schools. If the boys and the girls at Nsansa and Simba found your music nice, then you had definitely arrived. One of the groups that were getting a lot of attention at this time were a group called Fopo Mafia, as a breakaway from another group called NDC, Niggas Don't Care. Their name, for starters, was slang for being very drunk and had been coined by their skinny but 50 Cent inspired leader, Liquor Slave. The most interesting thing about Liquor Slave was that he was a really smart colored kid that went to a good school and had no business being spotted stumbling down your street, drinking peasant beer. This, in particular, was part of his charm and appeal as a rapper. His lyrics, styled after the drunken rumblings of an honest man, never failed to hit the hearts of those in Sansa schoolgirls. That, however, was not even the most interesting part of this group. That was only one member. They had a sex-crazed member named Holy K. Whose subject matter outside of alcohol was illicit sex with girls. Next to him was Stash, a colored kid that had more of an infatuation with rapping than the actual art form itself. Lastly was a rapper named Def Ends, a half Italian, half Zambian bespectacled rap genius. And, as usual, I couldn't stomach the fact that people were talking about him as the best rapper in the city. So I dissed him. Rap beef was a new thing for rappers in Ndola in those days. We were in the middle of watching 50 Cent and Shady Aftermath run a train over Jaru's career, and we had only just begun entertaining the idea of being disrespectful to people based on their following. When I dissed Def Ends, a nerve was struck and my name was sent to the wolves. Holy K, in support of his friend, proclaimed that he had a beating for me the next time he set eyes on me. This was 2003, and my high school was in their neighborhood. Can you imagine how unnerving that was? Sometimes in life, things just straighten themselves out. The energy around Def Ends and I meeting was so toxic, I could never be prepared for it when it eventually happened. All of a sudden, someone in my class was informing me that the Great Colored Hype was on the school premises. I don't know why he was there, but I damn sure was going to find out. When we met, however, something strange happened. I theorized that within the second that we met each other, we both saw ourselves in each other and realized that regardless of how different we were actually the same person. Both of us were the firstborn. Both of us liked the same type of music. We both had a love for literature as opposed to the people that we were constantly around. We became friends quite quickly. Over the course of this book, I shall probably tell you many different stories about my journeys with Italo Morelli, aka Def Ends. But just in case I don't get the chance to, here's one that comes to mind right now. Walking down his street one day, Italo told me about this song he was writing called Patience Pavement. I have always been a sucker for a deliberately deep and ambiguous title, but this particular song was special for more than just that. Italo lived on Art.Tic Road in the heart of Kansenshi. After years of being a middle-income neighborhood, his street was finally starting to show signs of wear and tear. And most reflective of this fact was in the signage. Where the sign should have read its full name, it instead read N-Wait Road. This had inspired Italo to write a song about how he felt, much like every other teen in Ndola at that time, trapped there. We all believed this would end when we finally completed our secondary school. So if we waited out, we would be okay. If you looked at photos of teenagers taken in Ndola around that time, I swear you can see a certain strange look that comes from being choked by small city air, in wait on patience pavement. That has been Italo Morelli for me. He has been a golden spirit that was written into the most amazing story ever written. And the beauty of the last sentence will only ever truly be grasped by him. That's the type of friend I am to him. The type that hides personalized compliments in a book about the most important album of his life to date. I once tried to explain to Chilu, another such friend of mine you shall hear more about later, the exact difference between rappers from Ndola and rappers from Lusaka. I don't remember how that conversation ended, but I know for a fact I recently only found the answer myself. If the answer is to be gotten, then surely it was from those defining years. I draw my differences between them now, solely based on their intention for rapping. If the answer is to be gotten, then surely it was from those defining years. I draw my differences between them now, solely based on their intention for rapping. I feel Ndola rappers wanted to make it out of their small city so bad that their win makes more sense to me. I am also aware of the fact that that level of bias can only be carried by someone from a small city. I am, for this reason, forever grateful for being from a small city. I feel like being a good rapper from Ndola translates into me being a good man in the world on some level. That's why I've always wanted to settle down in Ndola in the end. There's something about those quiet streets and small-mindedness that would be the perfect canvas for my final act. For me, there are whole neighborhoods that will never change no matter how much they change. The last time I went back to it, Ndola City choked me to death with tears for just walking through her streets. Even with all the development, Ndola still stubbornly refuses to feel like a trendy town. I believe it was in towns like these that ideas like freedom or revolution were born. There is a believable honesty in a sermon from a poor man. Pardon my segue, but that was the type of dream I was trying to embody in I Have a Dream. On a very far and almost disrespectful plane, I relate to Martin Luther King Jr. I see his small city dream. That is the thing with small city dreams, you see. Whenever they come up, they do amazing things in the world. I could even venture further and say, wasn't that what made the character of Jesus in the Bible so appealing? The small city kid that saved the world. Pardon my probably careless analysis for religious text. I was merely using it to help me see my point. This is all important to me, and by extension, you. Because looking back, I had subconsciously started making decisions that I would be very comfortable with in the future. My past has been a very good setup for my future, and has made my future, strangely, a great setup for my past. I recently decided I would be comfortable with only having as much time as I have lived to live. I'm now 30. If I died at 60, I think I wouldn't complain about much. When you look at life with this level of gratitude, I think death becomes significantly less scary. That is a state of mind that I think great minds like Martin Luther King Jr. tap into for them to do the amazing things they get credited for. A healthy lack of fear of death, I believe, is the biggest ingredient for a revolution. I must admit that I'm still a little afraid of death. I choke it up to human nature when I start to doubt my own beliefs on the matter and betray myself into panicking over mortality. My way out, however, is leaving this clarity of mind on pieces of art that I spread across the world in various forms. When I leave a state of mind on a song, it is as much for the listener as it is for me. When I empty on inspiration, I can summon energy from a song about sharing the feeling MLK had just before he got killed on that balcony. In my own Generation X way, I am marching on Salem. With all due respect.
The Art.Is.Tic. It's an honor to be here, my brother. Turn me up in the headphones a little bit. You know, there's an old saying: all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. Well, we done doing nothing.
May the light forever shine on everyone that glowed before me. We used to be just dope, now this whiskey soaked in glory. They made us Harley Quinns, we opened up for jokers. Stole this league from the shadows, now they kneel when they approach us. Even before you sit, these suckers who dethrone you, son.